3, 2,
Ignition.
1.
Lift off. Vehicles clear the pad.
This is the launch of Rocket Lab's Make It Rain, which happened on the 29th of June 2019. It was the 7th launch of their Electron Rocket, successfully delivering multiple CubeSats to low Earth orbit to further prove the reliability of one of the newest launch vehicles in the market. Hi, I'm Josh Keegan and welcome to this episode of the Space Down Under, where I shine a light on Australia's very active and ever-evolving space industry. In this episode, I managed to line up an interview with Steven Despotellis and Johanna Rigby from the Melbourne Space Program, who were both able to provide me with stunning details on Australia's involvement in Rocket Lab's Make It Rain launch. I also managed to find out what's next for Johanna, and let me just say, low Earth orbit? Who needs it? If you're new here, please click on the subscribe button. And while you're here, take a moment to check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/Josh Keegan. It's time to grab a cup of coffee, or at least your favourite beverage. And let's get started.
Lockdown.
In June 2019, Rocket Lab in New Zealand took an Australian CubeSat known as ACRUX-1 from engineering students as part of the Melbourne Space Program, safely delivering it to a low Earth orbit on a launch named Make It Rain. That's right, an Australian-made CubeSat built from scratch, literally from nothing, by university students in Melbourne, Australia. I had the unique opportunity to speak with both Johanna and Steven, having both worked on ACRUX-1 over Skype. Yep, COVID-19 restrictions were coming into effect and full social distancing meant that the opportunity to meet in person was just no longer possible. Both Steven and Johanna were working from home, roughly 1 week before the restrictions were rolled out Australia-wide, and we were all self-isolated. And yes, that's my dog. You can hear him in the background at one point barking.
The ACRUX-1, what does that actually stand for? Steven.
Good question. So ACRUX is a star within the Southern Cross constellation. It's the brightest star in the night sky. So we decided to name our satellite after that as a shining light to our students.
Oh, excellent. So, guys, just starting out, I'm going to ask you individual questions as well. So, what was your role in the ACRUX-1 there, Steven? What did you particularly do?
So there was a few roles that I held over my time on ACRUX-1. Essentially started out as the main structural engineer, so working on the chassis of the satellite, making sure it didn't vibrate itself to bits during launch. Then for a time I took over management of the flight vehicle team, which was concerned with development of the chassis, coordinating integration, electrical, physical integration, fitting everything together. And at the same time, also helped coordinate the test campaign for the satellite. So the vibration testing, vacuum testing, and that sort of thing.
Okay, excellent. And Johanna, did you have any role in ACRUX-1 or?
Yep, I did. So I was basically working as an engineer on the power team.
Yeah.
So basically working on the regulators that would be, basically you had a 5-volt bus and we would need to step the voltage up or down to power the different components. So I was working on that. Also looking at the sensor systems on the satellite. And then towards the end, I was working with testing the satellite with everyone else. So obviously doing the day in the life test on the satellite.
How long had you actually been working on ACRUX-1 before it went to low Earth orbit?
So I've been with the program since January 2016. So it was pretty much 3 and a bit years.
Mm-hmm. 3 and a bit years. So you're working on for 3 and a bit years before it actually went, or?
Yeah. I was working on ACRUX-1 that whole time. And admittedly, the first year or two was a bit of a shambles. We could probably get into that later. Roughly 3 years.
Roughly 3 years. All right. Well, so we'll talk about that in a bit more. So, what about you, Johanna? How long had you been working on ACRUX-1? Were you involved in that for a great length of time, or was it
a bit less? Yeah, I think I was involved for about 2 years, I want to say, since I want to say around like December or October 2017. So
Okay.
I joined when the program started gaining a lot more structure. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, fair enough. It gained more structure. So what was wrong with it to begin with?
I don't think it was anything wrong per se. It was a natural growth period that we had to go through. So essentially, the Melbourne Space Program started as a student group at the University of Melbourne, and it was a bunch of students who said, "Let's build a satellite," with no sort of experience, understanding of what that actually involved. And so for the first year or year and a half, there were teething issues, as you might expect, as people sort of pursued what they're interested in. But there wasn't a lot of that real industry level engineering processes.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, so it's to sort of guide everyone's effort and build towards that common goal.
So you were just starting from the ground up, like literally. You started with nothing and you just went, okay, let's go and build and launch something and stick it in orbit. And yeah, so you just started from scratch.
And I think they also wanted to build everything from scratch as well. So I think over time, we kind of like started accepting like, oh, maybe we can't build our radio from scratch. Maybe we should buy a radio. So I think that was a lot of like the adjustments that we made over time as well.
Since its inception, the Melbourne Space Program has grown to over 100 members, expanding its original scope of building just a single nanosatellite to constructing a series of nanosatellites, each aimed at addressing real-world problems facing Australia's space industry.
So a lot of people think the Melbourne Space Program is just sort of for engineering students, just a technical program, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Especially with ACRUX-1, we had a massive challenge dealing with the regulatory side of putting a satellite into space. Getting the required licenses for communications, registering it, all that sort of thing. So there's a whole area, or there was a whole area, and there still is, devoted to the legal regulatory side of things. So we've got law students involved there. We've got marketing and business students working on sort of promotion of the program, putting on events, that sort of thing. So it's really a multidisciplinary sort of program for all sorts of university students, which is a huge strength.
Wow. Yeah. All right. So it's not only the engineering and science nerds and all that sort of stuff. It's also everywhere else in the part of the university as well. That's awesome.
Because I think that's a big part of Melbourne Space Program, and that's why it's a great thing. Like, it's all well and good to be launching a satellite into space and it being useful, but I think one of the great things about it is actually that we're upskilling engineers.
What was the ACRUX-1 looking to discover when you were actually sending it up into orbit? Was it in anything in particular, or was it just an experiment to see if you could get something into orbit?
I love this question.
Yeah, you get it all the time.
Okay, I'll give a go, and Johanna can add into it. So essentially, ACRUX-1 wasn't looking to discover anything. I say it was really just a bit like a Sputnik type satellite, just a proof of concept, because we took a very unorthodox approach in building pretty much everything ourselves. We didn't know if it would work. We needed to prove that out, that capability.
Okay, yeah, brilliant. Johanna, do you have anything to add extra to that?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It was more of a proof of concept so that when we launch future satellites, we could say, oh, we've actually succeeded. Because if we try to do anything too complex the first time and it fails, you don't know, was it the satellite? Was it the added extra complexity? So, yeah. Yeah,
of course. So you kept it as simple as possible to actually just make it as a proof of concept. Can you describe for me what went through your head when that ACRUX-1 left your care? We'll start with you, Johanna. What were you thinking when your baby suddenly left you?
It was actually really stressful because obviously I'd been doing a lot of the day in the life testing, and the testing went all right. Like, sometimes the satellite would do great, and then other times the satellite would completely fail and just stop working. So it was very stressful when it went off because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And, we still did some testing after we sent it off, and we weren't sure well, firstly, we discovered some mistakes and we're like, oh, we should fix this. And then a couple of days later, it would be like, oh, wait, that actually was a mistake. We don't need to fix this. And it was just a lot of that afterwards.
Yep. All right. What about you, Steven? Did you have such anxieties?
I'm not going to lie, I was terrified. Having coordinated most of the environmental test campaigns, we didn't have quite enough time to do all the testing that we wanted to do. So I had a low confidence in the fact it would work, personally. Completely unfounded in the end because it worked fine. But exactly. I was terrified. Excited, but terrified.
That's the other thing. That's a knock-on question from the previous one. So when it actually got to orbit and it was up there and it was successful, I mean, you obviously, apart from the elation, how else did you feel that yes, we did it? Well, we're pretty good at what we do. Or
it was super exciting. I think it was actually really stressful in the day though because it didn't work straight away. It actually took us. How many hours? It took a couple hours for us to actually receive any of the packets. So that time was like really stressful. And then when we finally received it, we were just, everyone was just so happy and celebrating and cheering.
Immense relief, I think, because it was 3 years of a lot of effort from a lot of different people. And the fact that it worked, it was amazing.
Okay, all right. So the other thing is too is that the Electron Rocket is a relatively new rocket. I mean, it was the famous Make It Rain launch. So how did you manage? Two questions out of this one, which is one, how did you end up with Rocket Lab, and two, what was it like going with a launcher that didn't have a launch history as such?
I'll take this one.
Yeah, sure.
Essentially, it was a long process. Jump on our launch vehicle. Rocket Labs actually wasn't the first one that we were scheduled to be on. We're actually scheduled to be on a Falcon 9. And then what happened is that mission parameter changed so that the rocket was going higher than we needed. So then we eventually moved over to Rocket Lab. We went through a launch provider called Spaceflight for this one.
Right.
So they were sort of the middleman that helped broker all of that. Yeah. And it just so happened that we ended up, the Electron was launching in the right sort of time frame, going to the right sort of altitude. I personally didn't have too much. There was a little bit of flight heritage in Electron at that point. I'd done 3 previous launches.
Yeah.
So it wasn't too bad from my perspective. Johanna? Yeah, about the same. I was actually not really worried about the launch when they're launching the satellite. It was actually just really exciting watching it because we were all actually, so some people actually went to the site to watch the rocket launch. And then the rest of us were obviously watching it on a TV screen. So we booked out a room to watch it. So I was just excited seeing it go up there and kind of pointing off. Something I made is in there.
Yeah, that must have been an unreal feeling to know that rocket has got your stuff and it's going to go to orbit. I'm looking forward to going to see a Rocket Lab launch myself. It's New Zealand. It's only 3 hours away, providing we're all out of lockdown by then.
Yeah.
All right. Yep, Don.
I was just going to say, I think that was the other reason we were excited is because the Electron represented a brand new capability within the Southern Hemisphere, and it is not far away. So that was fantastic that we could help support that.
So who had the privilege of taking the CubeSat to the launch pad to actually have it all integrated? Was it either of you two or was it someone else? Neither of you?
Huh? Was it again? You actually got to put it in. Oh, it was Rowan. Sorry, Rowan went over. Yeah, okay. Which was really cool. So he went over to America. Yep, and actually got to place it in, which was really awesome.
Oh wow! So you got to place it in it. Wow.
Yeah. So the reason for that is Spaceflight was the American company, the launch provider. So they had the CubeSat deployer in America. So Rowan took our satellite there, integrated into the deployer, and then they shipped that to New Zealand and integrated into the...
Yeah. Right.
I was very jealous because I had uni classes at the time and I really wanted to go because I'm an American citizen. So I was like, that'll be easy for me.
Yeah. Oh, I can hear that in your accent, by the way. So, yeah. As a side note, as an American citizen working on an Australian CubeSat, what was that like, Johanna?
Oh, it's exciting. Well, I'm also Australian as well, so I've got multiple citizenships, which is helpful.
Oh, wow. Excellent.
Yeah, but it was really exciting, I think, because so my dad is Australian, and from a young age, he always taught me a lot about Australia and was always very pro-Australian. So when we lived in America, we'd always have Tim Tams at home and all of that. And when I actually told him about this, he was super excited because, Australia used to actually have a pretty booming space industry, and then it kind of went downhill. So it was very exciting to have a university actually build a satellite.
Yeah, this is actually quite unique for Australia as well. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm glad you're here too. All right. So I've heard and I've had a look online that there is an ACRUX-2. What's ACRUX-2?
Oh, it's $1 million question. Nearly. No. So ACRUX-2 is currently in the planning phase. We think we have a decent idea as to what we want to do with it. Essentially, we're looking at doing a 3U satellite, so 3 times bigger than ACRUX-1. The main payload we're trying to fly, so this one's actually going to do something more than just talk to us. So there's a company in Sydney called Sabre Astronautics, and they've developed a tether to deorbit a satellite in low Earth orbit. Yeah. And what we're trying, and it hasn't actually been flight proven yet. So we're thinking of integrating that tether and trying to prove out that as an Australian capability. And also doing a little bit more around automatic deorbiting in the event of satellite failure. So having a bit of a smart payload that can detect if the satellite's dead on arrival, or if something goes wrong, it can automatically activate itself and bring the satellite down so it doesn't become space junk.
Wow. And that's wow, that'll be a unique first, apart from Starlink, which apparently does that. But anyway, let's not talk about SpaceX. Let's not talk about SpaceX. All right, that's awesome. Are you guys involved with ACRUX-2 or very much, or what are you doing, Johanna? Are you doing anything towards that particular program?
I'm not involved with ACRUX-2 at the moment, but I am quite interested in doing more of a mentoring program with them. So just giving them tips and tricks, mistakes that we might have made in ACRUX-1 and hoping to guide them through the process. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Excellent. All right. And Steven, are you deeply involved with ACRUX-2 or?
You could say that. So I'm co-leading the project.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. With Gabby, who was one of the senior guys in ACRUX-1 as well. He was our main telecommunications guy. And together we're driving that project at the moment. We're literally just finished our recruitment application section for new students to jump on the program.
Okay.
So yeah, we're putting that mission together.
Oh, brilliant. Sounds exciting. I'm looking forward to coming down and seeing it. Hint, hint.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Excellent. All right. I know that satellites, when they go to orbit, they happen to have multiple things they do at once. So is there anything more that ACRUX-2 will be doing, or is it just those 2 things?
So hopefully the automatic deorbiting is the main objective of the mission. Yep. However, as it's spiraling back down to Earth, which roughly should take a week or 2. We're hoping to do a whole bunch of scientific experiments with it. So the tether that extends out of the satellite, as it passes through the Earth's magnetic field, a current is generated in the wire. And so hopefully by measuring that, we can do some characterization of the ionosphere. And by having a GPS system on the satellite, we can track where exactly around the Earth's ionosphere certain currents were generated. So we're hoping to do a bunch of scientific experiments around that.
Excellent. And when are you expecting it to launch, roughly?
There's
the $1 million question.
That's rough timelines. I'm hoping for, what are we now, 2020, sort of late 2022.
Yeah, okay.
Or mid to late 2022 would be hope that's our goal.
Yep.
Obviously, as things change all the time, especially with satellite launches. So we'll see how we.
Right. So, do you think you'll be going back to Rocket Lab to use their launch capability, or are you hoping, fingers crossed, that Australia has its own launch capability by that stage?
Oh, it'd be great if Australia had its own launch capability by that stage. We could all to launch. Look, hopefully, and we'd try and support that if it makes if we can. In the absence of sovereign launch capability, Rocket Labs is probably the best choice for us, just because it's close. They're launching quite frequently, and they go to our sort of orbits that we're after. I'd say probably Rocket Labs, unless something occurs in Australia. Okay,
excellent. That's a good response. I know what's next for you, Steven, but Johanna, what's next for you after all of this, apart from the mentoring? What's going to happen next?
I'm always interested in actually doing more of the program, because I've been volunteering a little bit more of the program, not with ACRUX-2, but with a different set of things. So we're working on a link budget for, what was the group called again? Skyhopper. So I've been working a little bit with Skyhopper as well. So that's under the Melbourne Space Program too. So hopefully finishing that up.
What's Skyhopper? Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So they're actually a university group who they're also going to be launching a satellite. And essentially what they want to do is it's more deep space research. So they actually want to look, and I think they want to look at deep space stars and collect data from them. So they've got like a whole thing going on there, which is actually really, really awesome.
Yes, deep space! Yes! I'm a massive enthusiast. You can't half tell. That's brilliant. So we're actually going to be doing our own deep space program. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time this morning there, guys. It's certainly been a very eye-opening experience for me. Thank you very much for still taking the time to talk to me during our lockdown with COVID-19. So, all right. Thanks very much for joining me this morning.
If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button, as I have more videos coming up and more around aerospace, drones, technology, and of course, coffee. If you like the content, please check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/Josh Keegan. The support of my Patreons allows me to continue to delve more deeply into Australia's involvement in the space industry. Thanks very much for watching, and please remember, stay caffeinated.